is full of character. He got to the pinnacle of society. George II was godfather to his daughter. He was the sheriff of Inverness. After all that early struggle to become the great chief, to become a great British peer, to be somebody in both societies, British society and medieval Celtic clan society, disastrously, it causes consternation. Bonnie Prince Charlie arrives on the west coast of Scotland and the last Jacobite rebellion starts up.
So, to come out in support of the rebellion and Bonnie Prince Charlie, that must have been a really difficult decision for him.
I think it was very difficult. I think he has been out for the Stuarts all his life. Bonnie Prince Charlie represents an independent Scotland, to Simon at least, and to many of the clans. Nevertheless, he has everything to lose. This is an establishment man.
So he's committed, despite himself, but his decision will really be disastrous for the clan, will it not?
Oh, completely. Yes, yes. It was said afterwards that the government left not so much as a cock to crow the dawn of day afterwards. They devastated his lands. Everything of his was either sold off or destroyed. His estates were forfeit. It could have destroyed the clan completely.
After the Battle of Culloden, countless Frasers lost their lives as British troops laid waste to their lands. The government was determined to prevent the clans from rising again and directed its wrath at the very heart of Highland culture. Speaking Gaelic, playing the bagpipes, wearing tartan, all became punishable by hanging. But above all, Highlanders were forbidden to carry arms. Now this brutal campaign was designed to destroy the clan system. From a 21st century perspective, it seems to me like ethnic cleansing. Simon the Fox was now a rebel on the run. But there was nowhere to hide and the Fraser clan chief was soon captured. Taken to London, he was found guilty of treason and condemned to death, becoming the last man to be beheaded at the Tower of London in 1747.
The last moments of Simon the Fox were a public spectacle. Just before the executioner's axe fell, an audience stand collapsed, crushing and injuring the crowds. Now this so amused the Fraser clan chief that he burst into hysterical laughter. He was still laughing when they cut his head off. And this is the origin of the phrase, quite literally, to laugh your head off.
Wardlaw Mausoleum, just a few miles from Beaulieu, is the burial place for the Lords of Lovat, chiefs of Clann Fraser.
Well, this really is impressive. Inside the memorial are plaques on the walls to various members of Clann Fraser, but taking centre stage is this memorial. To the memory of Thomas Lord Fraser of Lovat, this monument was erected by Simon, Lord Fraser of Lovat, his son. Now that's Simon the Fox, who, likewise having undergone many and great vicissitudes, he in the end, at the head of his clan, forced his way to his paternal inheritance with his sword in his hand and relieved his kindred and followers from oppression and slavery. Now what's really interesting about this is it says so much more about Simon the Fox than it does about his father. Simon clearly saw himself as a great hero, a great clan chief, and wanted everyone to know it. Beneath the memorial is this massive trapdoor that leads to a private burial chamber. Now rumour has it, this is the final resting place of Simon the Fox. It's an uncomfortable feeling being amongst the dead. The official line is that Simon was buried where he was executed at the Tower of London, but some people believe his body was smuggled back here to Beaulieu. It's eerie to think that one of these lead coffins may contain a headless corpse, but the intrigue is certainly fitting for one of clan history's most notorious characters.
Culloden was a total disaster for Simon the Fox and his clan. Not only had he paid the ultimate price with his life for supporting the Jacobites, but his son and heir was thrown into prison. And with the confiscation of their ancestral lands by the British state, Clann Fraser seemed like a spent force. The next chapter in the history of Clann Fraser would begin with yet another death. The Highland clans were desperate to restore their fortunes, but their estates were now being run by government factors, men without ties of kinship to the people who lived on the land they managed. When rents were due, non-payers were evicted by force if necessary. Colin Campbell of Glenure was one of these government factors. Now, managing forfeited Jacobite estates in the heart of the Highlands was a dangerous business. And Colin Campbell wasn't just unwelcome, he was a marked man. Having spent the 14th of May 1752 collecting rents, Campbell was travelling through the district of Appin near Ballachulish. As he made his way through these woods, he was shot in the back by a mystery assassin. This cairn marks the spot where he fell. The murder of Colin Campbell would mark the beginning of an astonishing comeback that would see Clann Fraser climb to the very top of the British establishment. Now, the fact that the murder victim was a Campbell is deeply significant. Having been on the winning side at Culloden, the Campbells were effectively ruling Scotland on behalf of the British state, and they weren't going to let the murder of one of their own kind go unpunished. The government arrested an innocent man. The trial of James Stewart of the Glens is one of the most shameful miscarriages of justice in Scottish history. I'm meeting author James Irvin Robertson to learn how the Appin murder trial gave Simon Fraser, son of Simon the Fox, the chance to resurrect Clann Fraser. James, in what way was the Appin murder significant in the rehabilitation of the Frasers?
The Appin murder in itself was significant because a minor government official got killed by a heavy in the woods, which in normal times wouldn't be a big deal. But the government was terrified of Jacobites, they were terrified of a resurgence. Bonnie Prince Charlie was lurking around. So the government thought, we have got to put a stake through the heart of Jacobites and their whole philosophy, so we will have a show trial. We will swamp the place with soldiers, get some poor mug up as the victim and string him up and make a big deal about it so everybody is terrified of us and never gets going with Jacobites again.
What was Simon Fraser's role in the trial?
After Culloden, Simon the Fox had his head chopped off. Simon the son, who was leading the clan troops, very reluctantly, was faced with the job of rehabilitation. He spent a very, very short time in prison, mainly because I suspect he was on the government side all the way along. He became an advocate when the trial of James of the Glens for the Appin murder came up. It was a huge show trial. It was proving, the government was using it to prove that Jacobitism was dead, and Simon clearly lobbied very hard. He'd only just been qualified. He lobbied very hard for the job on the prosecution side.
Honour doesn't really come into this picture very much, does it? It was a turncoat.
Any clan chief worth his salt will turn his coat when the interests of his clan are at heart.
What happened during the trial?
Fraser would stand on his hind legs in front of the world and say that the murder was a barefaced insult to His Majesty's benign authority on this realm. And so everybody applauded, and he proved himself to be the most supportive of all the government supporters.
And what happened to poor old James Stewart?
James Stewart was found guilty of being an accessory to murder, and he was hanged right there, where the bridge now joins that little bit of cliff. And there his body swung at the end of its rope for quite some time until his skeleton rotted and fell to pieces, and then they wired it up again, and he swung for a bit longer before he eventually fell through the grills on the gibbet and was collected up in little pieces and buried in his family graveyard.
A grisly reminder of the evils of Jacobitism.
A grisly reminder of how barbaric people were in their days, I think, is probably better.
Simon Fraser's obsequious performance at the Appin murder trial had put his clan firmly on the road to recovery. Although the government remained deeply suspicious of the Highland clans, it was still prepared to use them to serve its own ends. From the middle of the 18th century, Great Britain became involved in a succession of colonial wars, and the Highlands became a massive recruiting ground for the British Army. In order to build an empire, the